Good afternoon and welcome to 2020 Vision, Eyes on Your Workforce, hosted by the Four-County Labor Market Planning Board. I am Gemma Mendez-Smith, the Executive Director with the Four-County Labor Market Planning Board, and we are very excited that you can join us here live today. We understand what's happening in our area and around the world with the pandemic, and this is a very difficult time for people at the moment. We are happy that we could still involve you in the work that we do and that you are able to take the time out of your very, very busy schedule to participate with us and to still be able to get that labor market information that we have for you. It may not seem as important today, but we do thank you very much for spending your afternoon with us. We will be sharing the information that we have been able to collect for the year. And again, thank you so much in this crisis period that you can join us. We're going to start our work session today with several of our researchers are going to be presenting. So we will start with Darlene Boisvenu. Darlene is our project coordinator for the In-Demand Skilled Trades project. And that is a special project that we were asked by the Ministry of Labor, Training and Skills Development to conduct as part of our research in our region. This research was actually conducted across the province, so all workforce planning boards and all local employment planning councils did participate in this particular project. So we are very pleased today to be able to share with you the information that we collected for our economic region and our service area, which is the area of Bruce, Grey, Huron, and Perth counties. So I'd love to introduce to you now Darlene Boisvenu.
Very much for participating in this event. As Gemma said, my name is Darlene Boisvenu. I've worked with apprentices and employers for the past 27 years. I was a training consultant with the Ministry of Training, Colleges and Universities and registered and monitor apprentices for all of those years. I've met some incredible employers and apprentices over the years, and I'm passionate about the trades and apprenticeship. Actually, my family cringes anytime someone says something about the trades because they know I'll go off on a tangent. So I was really excited when Gemma contacted me to do this contract. I couldn't say yes fast enough. Now, the comments that I'm making today are from employers. These are not my opinions. So my responsibility and role in this project was to survey employers in Grey, Bruce, Huron, Perth, Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation, Saugeen First Nation, and Huronia Area Aboriginal Management Board. It's quite a large area to cover in a short period of time. Approximately 165 employers were contacted. Manufacturing plants, large employers, small employers, union, and non-union employers were contacted. Our target number for completed surveys was 100 employers, and approximately 111 responded. 4 focus group sessions were held in Stratford, Clinton, Port Elgin, and Owen Sound. Surveys were available online. I emailed a number of employers and associations, and I visited a number of employers in person. The in-person interviews were probably the most successful and the most telling. The employers I spoke to were anxious to participate and were very open and honest about their experiences, successes, and challenges when dealing with the apprenticeship system. I did contact a number of employers that did not respond or attend a focus group session to see why they did not participate. Some responded that they did not have time. Some suggested that the focus group should be held in the evening because they didn't have time during the day to attend. And some were and are frustrated with the ministry because there has been lots of talk about changes, but nothing ever happens. And the fact that the apprenticeship staff is nowhere to be seen. They are no longer visiting work sites. The employers don't know who or how to get their questions answered and how to proceed with registrations, etc. So when we're talking about skilled trades, we're talking about 4 different sectors. We're talking about the construction sector, which are plumbers, electricians, carpenters, painters, etc. We have the motive power sector. Those are automotive, truck and coach, motorcycle, heavy equipment techs. The service sector includes people such as cooks, hairstylists, arborists, dairy herdspersons, educational assistants, and a whole bunch more. And the industrial sector, which are people such as millwrights, industrial electricians, machinists, welders, tool and die makers, and so on. Now, within those sectors, there are the compulsory trades and voluntary trades. Compulsory trades mean that in order to work legally in that field, you must either be a registered apprentice or certified. This is important to understand because if a trade is deemed compulsory, the employer has no choice but to hire either an apprentice or someone who is certified. And certified tradespeople, as we know, are few and far between. There is no such thing as a helper in those fields. Ratios are also a factor in some trades. Employers would like to take on more apprentices. However, ratios limit the number of apprentices an employer can register to the number of journey persons on staff. Voluntary trades are trades where certification is not a legal requirement, but apprenticeship and certification is no less important, and many employers in the voluntary trades continue to register apprentices and are seeking certified people. But some employers do not register apprentices in the voluntary trades because it's not a legal requirement. I felt it important to get input from the four sectors, from compulsory and voluntary trades, so we would have a broad and varied group of employers. The ministry had a list of questions to be answered, which can be found in Ting Ting's report and Eric's focus group reports. But I felt that there was one area that was extremely important and challenging in our communities that was not mentioned on the list of questions. So I added an extra question, which, if we look at the responses, it's probably the question we got most feedback and comments and suggestions about. And that question was, what impact does the in-school component have on your company? And is there a delivery model best suited to your needs? For the in-school training requirements, most apprentices are required to attend trade school as part of their apprenticeship. There are typically 3 levels of school that must be completed. The delivery method is usually block release, and that means the apprentice is in school for 8 weeks at a time, full time. Or there's the day release program, and that means the apprentice attends school 1 day a week for a longer period of time. Now, the average age of an apprentice in Ontario is 28 years old. Yes, we do have younger apprentices and we do have older apprentices as well, but oftentimes the apprentices are married, have children, and have financial obligations. The challenges with the in-school component is that it is not always available in our communities. Apprentices are often having to move to the city for the 8 weeks. They have to find accommodation and be away from their families. Transportation then also becomes an issue. Not all apprentices have cars. There's not always public transportation available. And our weather can be a factor as well. Apprentices are laid off from their jobs and must file for employment insurance, which often doesn't arrive until the end of their training sessions. The apprentices often struggle financially, and the employers say they lose their apprentices for that period of time and say that their apprentices are called away at poor times of the year or their busiest times of the year. The in-school training component to apprenticeship is very challenging in small and rural communities and impacts both apprentices and employers equally. Timing and local training is of utmost importance, and changes have to be made. Another common theme with many employers is about youth and high school programs. Many employers feel that the youth in our communities are not always aware or prepared to enter the trades. The Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program is a program designed to encourage high school students to enter the trades by doing a co-op placement with an employer and learn skills while on the job. The student has the opportunity to be registered as an apprentice while in high school and accumulate hours that will count towards their apprenticeship upon graduation. Many of the employers interviewed do take OYAP students, but believe that more work needs to be done. They feel that the provincial government must do more to promote the trades. There should be more marketing to equity groups such as young women. Employers feel that more emphasis and education about apprenticeships and trades should be encouraged, and that we need to influence the influencers, that being parents. Having said that, you should be aware that the OYAP programs in the 4 counties have some of the highest rates of student participation and is one of the most successful programs in the province. There is no question that we need more certified tradespeople and apprentices in Grey, Bruce, Huron, and Perth, but that can only happen if we all work together. We need to remove the stigma of trades as being a lesser career. We have to continue to talk about apprenticeship to our youth, women, newcomers to Canada. Maybe start talking to younger students. We need to get parents involved and educate them about the job opportunities for tradespeople, how being certified in trade can lead to other opportunities. And we need employers to register apprentices as much and as often as they can. We can do all of these things, but we also need help from the provincial government. Employers need financial assistance either with wage subsidies or training subsidies. Employers need someone to talk to have some guidance and direction on the registration completion process, how to get their apprentices registered to school. The apprentices need financial assistance as well. They need local and timely schooling. They need guidance and direction. And the province needs to market the trades more vigorously. They need to look at ratios and they need to listen to employers and they need to look at communities and the needs of communities. What works well in a large urban center is not necessarily what needs to be done in small rural communities. The time for action is now. So now I'm going to lead it off to Gemma to see if anyone has any questions. Gemma?
Thank you, Darlene. And we don't have any questions from our audience at the moment. So we do thank you for the research and the work that you've done and being engaged with the employers. I know that your expertise in your previous position with the Ministry of Training, Colleges and Universities as an employment training consultant for apprenticeships really did help us to be able to gather good information from our employers. Your expertise was invaluable to this research. Now we're going to switch over to Ting Ting, and Ting Ting Zhang is our researcher that helped us with this project. And it's really incredible. Today we are able to do this live event from the services of CTRE Productions, one of our partner businesses in our community. They are in Grey County. So it was really great to be able to continue with this event and be able to share this information with you. So Ting Ting is one of our staff that works in London, and that's where she's joining us from today. Ting Ting, it's up to you. You're on.
My name is Ting Ting, and I'm working as a researcher with the full county planning board. First, I would like to thank Darlene for the research she has done for the basically employer engagement survey. Without her help, I'm not able to conduct the report for the in-demand skill trades. For the report, I've done both quantitative and qualitative analysis and to identify the highly demanded skill trades in our region and trying to find what's the underlying factors that cause this situation. First, I would like to share my screen with you. Okay. So for the in-demand skill trades report, I first analyzed the 2011 National Household Survey and 2016 census data to find the trend in the skill trades in the 4 county area between these 5 years. So what I find is for construction trades, most of the construction trades shrink with a negative percentage change in employment between 2011 and 2016. Only 4 trades are growing and indicate an increasing demand, while the greatest demanded trades are carpenters, heating, refrigeration, and air conditioning mechanics. That's for construction trades. For industrial trades, the most in-demand trades are mechanists, machining and tooling inspectors, and process control and machine operators for food and beverage processing. Lastly, I look at the multi-power trades and find The most demanded trades are automotive service technicians, truck and bus mechanics, mechanical repairs. And that's the results I find from the two data sets. And then I look at the employer engagement survey we conducted last year in 2019. What I find is the most in-demand trades are millwrights, licensed technicians for sheet metal and refrigeration, licensed electricians, and industrial mechanics, and welders. And we not only ask employers, okay, what is the most in-demand trades that for your sectors, and we also ask them what's the reasons that they think for these hard-to-fill positions, and employers think an aging workforce is the most important issue that severely affected the local skilled trades community and will continually affect the community over the next 5 years. The second most threatening issue is the lack of available workers in the current labor pool. Basically, they cannot find available workers to work for them. Lastly, the first two factors reflect the half of the employers we surveyed and their concerns. The third mostly mentioned issue is the lack of youth who are interested in skilled trades. Several employers complain that the public school system is pushing students away from trades, and many people still do not have the right knowledge or understanding about skilled trades. Employers of in-demand trades not only facing these issues, they also face different obstacles related to apprenticeship. There is limited public transportation in the 4-county area, and distance to be traveled in rural communities can be quite far. Apprentices also need to go to cities to take trades courses since no local schools are available. Another barrier will be the difficulty to find tradespeople in the market, as there are limited young and qualified candidates in the market. Moreover, skilled trades jobs, there's some misconceptions regarding skilled trades and apprentices, and these misconceptions persist over time. The youth are told that the skilled trades jobs are inferior to other jobs, so they will see such positions as their least choice. In order to solve the problems we just mentioned, we ask employers which kind of recommendation they can give to themselves and also to the government to improve the current situation. So for employers, they think at least half of employers think that the employers need to pay a competitive wage and a good benefit package for their employees in order to increase the number of apprentices and joining persons in high demand trades. Half of employers also think flexible working hours and good working environment would also work to induce apprentices and joining persons. With more respectful and inclusive workplaces, apprentices tend to commit more to the training. Also, offering high quality training and a positive learning environment can attract additional apprentices through word of mouth. The most popular recruitment methods employers use are social media right now, such as Indeed and Facebook. However, the employers think they should also consider attending job fairs and talking to students directly about their trades and career paths. In this way, students can get first-hand information from people already working in the current specific trades. For the government, employers suggest that first, the government should provide more local training local training options or more variety of trades training. While many communities do not have local schools and public transportation is not available, apprentices need to attend trade schools far away and pay for their own accommodations. So if local training delivery agencies are approved and available, employers will no longer need to worry about the timing of schools and loss of productivity during school periods. As you may know, perceptions and stigmas towards trades are often difficult to change or eliminate. From our survey, 18% of employers think the government should promote trades more to the public and provide the right information about trades and apprenticeship. They also suggest that marketing campaigns should reach youth earlier and educate schools better about the value of a career in the trades. And basically, we also talk about in the report. We also mentioned the millennial values. So we will. For the government, it's important for them to know how the millennials value their job and how skilled trades jobs can actually match these values. So they need to find a way to promote such things to the youth. Other than promotion, 17.5% of employers surveyed suggest that the government should provide wage subsidies and tax credits for employers to help them to pay actual training and incentivize apprentices. This financial help can motivate employers to provide good wages and benefits for their employees, as sponsoring apprentices can be costly. The government also should offer more financial assistance for employees. Several employers indicate that apprentices are not able to afford the expenses of being away from home with little or even no income when they study at trade schools. These apprentices need accessible financial support to finish their training and apprenticeship. We also find the other suggestions from employers, such as many employers also think that government can release housing or transportation constraints so that people will choose to move to the full county area and stay. Ideally, the government can make the full counties an appealing place to live and work. Employers also mentioned the need of apprenticeship staffs in the full county area to help apprentices and employers with any issues that may arise. So that's above all is the main findings from our in-demand skill trades report. So if you are interested to know more information and details, you can find the full report on our website. Thank you.
Thank you, Ting Ting. And if you want to stick around, we do have a couple of questions that are coming up, and I will have to bring Darlene back in to answer one of these questions, but Ting Ting will start with you. And the question is, what's the best way to address the misconception that skilled trades are less desirable jobs? And you had this research to be able to think about a response for that question.
Okay, so in our report, we mentioned that, and also Darlene mentioned a little bit about this kind of issue. So misconceptions are really hard to change, but it takes time for sure, and also effort. So that's why one of the suggestions from the employers is they should talk directly with students, so they can go to schools and they can go to job fairs and to talk to the students and share their experiences. And also, not only for students, most important is for the teachers and the parents, and they are the sometimes they will make such a big influence for the students and what kind of a career they need to choose. So there will be some opportunities for employers to talk to the schools, to high schools, earlier the better, right? Or to go to the education systems or go to job fairs to talk to them and correct some misconceptions. And also the government will play a really important role in promoting skilled trades and to provide the right information to the public.
Thank you, Ting Ting. And we have some of that already happening. We know that the ministry has done some work around some ads that they've been playing online, as well as the federal government has set up a task force. And one of our good friends of the Four County Labour Market Planning Board, Jamie McMillan, is certainly a very strong advocate for not just the skilled trades, but also women in the skilled trades. And so that is pretty awesome. That's happening already. We just need to see more of that. Additionally, I would like to say that the the school boards in our region, the 4 school boards, the Blue Water District School Board, Bruce Grey Catholic District School Board, the Avon-Maitland District School Board, and the Huron-Perth Catholic School Board, have all been doing a lot of good work. And Darlene did allude to this in her presentation, where the numbers are a higher percent, per capita in our area. And that is because of the good work of all of the Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program coordinators that have been working diligently in our region to change those misconceptions. So we certainly want to give a shout out to all of the hard work that's already happening in our region. We know that there is still a lot to do, and we will continue to be a force that we can support that work that's happening here at the Four County Labour Market Planning Board. To the second question that came up, and I think I wanted to throw this one to Darlene, because Darlene has been working in this field for many, many years and knows quite a lot about what employers think and how they feel about apprenticeships in our region. And so I wanted to throw this question to Darlene. So Darlene, the question is, were any of the responses from the employers surprising to you?
What Gemma said before, I saw the questions. Was I surprised by any of the responses from the employers? No, I wasn't. I've been hearing this for a long, long time. There are changes that need to be made, and we've tried over the years, but there still needs to be a lot done. The other thing, when we're talking about how do we get the youth involved or other people involved, we are doing a really, really good job within Grey Bruce and Huron and Perth. For example, with the Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program, we have 2 great coordinators, and what they're doing is they're having events for and activities for the general public. They're bringing in young women, they're bringing in their mothers, they're bringing in people who might not have known anything about the trades. And so there are activities happening within the high schools, after school, within the community, where introducing trades to people. And I think those have been very successful. And I think it's opened the eyes of many, many people who really didn't know very much about trades. But now when you look at it, they can see what's there, what's available. And there's lots of employment within Grey Bruce, Huron, and Perth. Employers are always looking for someone. So things are changing, and people are changing their minds and are getting interested in the trade. So, but we still need to continue. We can't stop, and so we just keep plugging away and doing whatever we can within our communities to introduce the trades to the general public. I think that's it.
Thank you, Darlene. And as you were talking, Darlene, I was trying to think of, there are other organizations as well in our community that are doing things to introduce skilled trades. And I know I will forget, I won't remember every organization that's doing work around this, but certainly 2 places come to mind. And in the north of our region, in Bruce and Grey counties, we have Launchpad that does work with youth that are 13 to 18 years old. And they have a lot of hands-on skilled trades, other things outside of the skilled trades, but they do have a focus on the skilled trades. And so youth are getting invested in and learning more about the skilled trades. So that's an awesome tool and resource to have in our community. And then south of our region, we have the technical training group that does some work through their FunTech program. And FunTech Tech does introduce young people to the skilled trades, and they have camps that they do, and young people can learn about and get involved, hands-on activities with the skilled trades. And those are the two that I will highlight. But like I said, there are many other activities that are going on. So parents, if you are out there and you're listening, think about who you need to tap into to find out information about what's happening around the skilled trades in your region, to get your young people thinking about, interested in, and learning more about how they can secure a future within the skilled trades. So Darlene and Ting Ting, thank you so much for the work that you've done. I would like to say thank you to the Ministry of Labour Training and Skills Development for the opportunity that they have granted the Four-County Labour Market Planning Board to be able to undertake this work and get a better understanding of what is happening within our region. We talk a lot about how we are in a rural community and we want to make sure that our voices are heard. This was a fabulous opportunity that we were given for employers to be able to get their voices heard. And thank you to the employers that had participated through the work of Darlene and other things that we've been doing in our community, and getting involved in those opportunities for youth, whether it be co-op positions through high schools or post-secondary opportunities for job shadows and some of the other things that they're getting involved in, and particularly getting involved in the Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program. Put your hand up as an employer to be able to say, we are willing to take young people on, we're willing to train that upcoming workforce. So thank you very much. And so we're going to continue on. This is going to be a marathon of information. So bear with us. This is something new that we're doing. So we're hoping that you're able to hear what we're saying. The documents are posted on this page that you're on for the website for this interactive session. Give us your questions so we can answer them as best we can. And this is interactive. I know you're sitting there thinking, oh, I'm listening, but you can interact. There is a chat box below the screen that you're able to do the live viewing. And I know that we have been posting how you can do that as well. So below the screen, you will see that chat box. Please ask your questions. And thank you for the comments that have been coming in. There was a question about the recording. This session will be recorded and available to our community in the future. I won't say a time, but it's very quick. And you will be able to re-engage with this document and this live broadcast. Hard copies are available. We do have them available here in our office, and when we are able to get the documents mailed out, we don't want to tie up our courier services because they are busy doing other things to help us with this pandemic. So we are going to wait. We're going to push pause on sending things out, but trust me, you will be getting hard copies. If you request a hard copy, please just email us and we'll make sure you get that. Also, after this session, we will have an evaluation. We will ask you to evaluate the process, the event, how you thought it went, but also the documents. That is part of our requirement that we need to provide back to the ministry. And this is a way that they are able to know if we are meeting the goals of our community. It gives us a chance to be able to also improve our services as we move forward. So we absolutely do look forward to you sharing with us your thoughts about not just the event that we're hosting today, but also the reports that we have produced, the quality, the information, and so on. So we do look forward to you doing that. So I now have to share my screen with you because I am going to be your next presenter, and I will be presenting on two main documents that we do. One is our local labor market plan, and then we have completed a few projects that required research, and I will share those with you as well. So hunker down. I will try to take those, go slow, make sure you're getting the information you need. And you can tell that I have a smartwatch. I keep looking at it because it keeps beeping. I just want to make sure that I'm not missing anything, but I should keep my eye on the screen. So I will do that. So anyway, let's get going. And I'm going to start with the local labor market plan. This is the annual document that we provide for our community. And I just wanted to preface this with saying that with the pandemic that's happening and the effects of this particular situation on our workforce, on our businesses, and on our the people in our workforce, not just the numbers, but the people in our workforce, we recognize that it will change moving forward. But for now, we're going to present to you the information that we have that's the most up to date. And of course, we're going to continue to serve you in our community by making sure that we're keeping track of what would happen, could happen, and what might be the differences post COVID-19. So we promise to be able to make that with you, and making sure that you get the information you need. So bear with us. This is all happening and it's all unfolding very quickly. We promise, as your Workforce Development Board in the region, we will keep track of that and we will do our best to answer the questions. Now, I did see something happening here that someone wanted me to mention something, and I will do this before I go into my next presentation because it makes sense following the presentation we just had. And I've been asked to mention that the Technical Training Group has an apprenticeship model, and they offer 3 local multi-trade manufacturing pre-apprenticeships, and those are being offered in Stratford, Clinton, and Listowel. And so visit the Technical Training Group page for information around those apprenticeship training pieces. I know that, and mentioning that, I also know that Georgian College has a pre-apprenticeship program training coming up, and there is also pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship training through Fanshawe College. So keep an eye on those institutions that provide that training, making sure that you're getting the most up-to-date information around the skilled trades and the training happening locally. So I will go ahead, and it's funny, if you see my office, the setup is quite intriguing. I feel so techie today. I'm not usually techie, just so you know, and I feel very techie today. So let's hope that this goes off without a hitch. So I will get my slide presentation ready. I'm going to share my screen with you, and we will get going talking about the local labor market plan and other documents that we have for you. So the local labor market plan is one of our main documents that we provide to you as a community every year, and we are very happy to be able to do that and share with you the information. So as usual, we want to make sure that you get a good grasp of what might be happening across our 4-county region, and we have a little bit of information that we can share with you as each county. So we'll get to that later on in this presentation. So my screen is not clicking, so we'll go back to that. So when we discuss what are the key themes as we discuss what's happening in the 4-county region, they have been similar. We identify the significant labor market challenges that happen as we talk about the labor market. Just a minute here. I'm having a little bit of a challenge here getting my mouse to the right screen, so bear with me. And I will maybe touch the screen. So we will identify significant labor market issues in the area that we have found out through research. We want to be able to set some strategic direction that addresses the issues that our community has, and put forward some action plans that we can address as we move forward with the labor market challenges. So our first piece is for the past 5 years, what we have seen is the outcomes for our local labor market, and making sure that we are able to show what's happening. So we see that over the past 5 years, employment has been slowly increasing, and it has reached the maximum of 155,800 people in 2018. And these numbers that we're sharing with you, and any of these stats that we're sharing with you, it's actually for the economic region of Stratford-Bruce Peninsula. It is the way that we are able to collect our data from StatsCan. So that would be the area that it's covering, and it does speak to the 4 counties of Bruce, Grey, Huron, and Perth. So we are fortunate to be able to do that. So we see that the employment decreased to 154,600 in 2019. So we see a little bit of a decrease there in 2019 for our workforce, and that represented a 0.8% drop when we compare it to 2018. And this decrease was mainly driven by the loss of jobs that came from a significant shredding of full-time jobs, 5,400 net jobs decline that could not be offset by the part-time hiring of 4,100 net workers. So therefore, the increasing full-time work opportunities remains an issue that we want to address. We want to talk to employers about how we might be able to transition from part-time to full-time. But the other thing that I would like you to think about as we are dealing with these issues and these challenges and thinking about part-time and full-time work is that some people in our community continue to choose part-time as an optimal work. Not everyone, but some people do choose part-time as an optimal work experience for them. So when we are talking about employment, full and part-time, we want to make sure that we keep that particular lens on as well. Some people prefer to do that. So, we'll make sure that we are able to address those as we are going forward with our research. Some of the persistent issues in our region, we are able to see that we do see that shrinking labor force happening, and as we can see, the labor force, we talked about that at the previous slide, and even though the labor force had increased to 161,800 in 2018, 2019 only experienced a slight decrease of about 300 people. So we are looking here at the labor force. So this would be people that are 15 and over that are engaged in our labor market. So therefore, the labor force didn't change much in the last year. The participation rate in the Stratford-Bruce Peninsula region has relatively increased to 65.2% in 2018. However, last year it did experience a slight decrease. The 2018 participation rate was 64.6%, and you can see that those numbers there for the participation rates. So what I wanted to point out with this slide as well is that when we look at how that labor market is changing, that is something that we want to make sure that we keep an eye on and we look at. We see that we have more people moving into that 55 and over age bracket. And so when we see that happening, we want to know what's happening down here. Are we able to have that group coming in and making sure that we are backfilling these age cohorts here, and we're regenerating, if you will, that workforce. So we want to make sure that we're keeping that on high alert. Our population continues to age, and we see that moving here. And so how do we mitigate that? What are the strategies? And I'm not going to try to answer that question here, but just for you to think about, how do we mitigate that particular piece? How do we grow the workforce within these areas here, the 15 to 24, which is this group here, the 25 to 44-year-olds. These two areas here are the areas we're going to be focusing on as we move forward in those areas. We do see that we have a low unemployment rate happening and we continue to. And I will have to say here that we're going to have to push pause and see what happens over the next little while. Things will be different. That's the reality of what we are experiencing now, with businesses having to shut down. And we know that some of our businesses may not survive this. We are hoping for the best, but we will have to see what happens on the post-pandemic world. But for now, we did see that we have that low unemployment rate, and that continues to drop. We did see a slight increase there. So we see that 2018 was our lowest at 3.7%. We did have an increase to 4.3% for 2019. And 3.7%, as a reminder to those who may not have heard this information before, was the lowest unemployment rate for any economic region in the last decade, when we were talking about that back in 2018. So we see that we did have a slight increase again in 2019, and we will just keep an eye on, we'll keep giving you information about that as it comes available, because we know that, things will be a little bit different post pandemic. And then, of course, I did mention a little bit about the aging population. We need to keep that on point for us. We need to make sure that as our businesses are doing work in our region, how are they going to meet those workforce needs? And what do we as a community 4-county region, each county in particular, every municipality within those counties. What do we need to do to work together to make sure that we're meeting those needs of both our workforce and our employers? So as we move on, and we also wanted to talk about the migration characteristics and how those affect what's happening in our region. And later on, you're going to see some of this information. So we'll just move on to ways to improve the supply. So as we talk about the ways that we can improve the supply, we want to attract youth to stay in the 4-county area. So it was a perfect start to our presentations today as we talked about how do we get more people involved in the skilled trades. And that is one of the areas that we need to focus on. And Darlene mentioned something quite interesting, and that is the fact that the average age of a skilled tradesperson, an apprentice, is anywhere between 27 and 28 years old. So we know that people are not always necessarily getting involved in the skilled trades immediately in high school or immediately out of high school. Some people are getting involved a little bit later. I don't care when you get involved, just get involved. And so keep eyes on, share that information about how those skilled trades positions are going to be so vitally important to us moving forward, and that as many people as possible who find that this is something they can really enjoy will certainly be able to participate in. So keep not just youth but everyone, but we want to make sure that there are different ways of being able to help youth. One of the things that we worked on this year, and you'll see that it won't be presented on today, but you will see that on our website, is that we talked about careers, higher skilled careers, as we're talking about the attraction of a workforce that meets the needs of our local employers. We will be remiss in not mentioning the work that's happening with the Life Extension Project at Bruce Power. So there are different changes and how we might be able to make sure that we meet those needs. So we want to make sure that we are paying attention to the needs of the employers as we go along, and making sure that we're sharing all of the information. So on our website, you're going to see that link for those higher skilled job profiles, and there are about 20 that we did, and you'll see that on our new website once that's launched shortly. Improve local workers' competencies such as work ethic, self-motivation, and teamwork. And we do see that continues to be one of the things that those soft skill pieces, and helping people to improve those, that's one of the things that we want to make sure that we are working on as we continue. We still see that about 6,900 people still remain unemployed in our region, based on those who are participating in the labor force and those who are working and those who are not. So there are several people, thousands of people that we still need to meet to help with what's happening, with the work and the skills that we're looking. More than likely, we'll probably see that number rise, but we'll get back to that later on as we continue to deliver services in our region. Among all ages, the youth unemployment rate is the highest at 9.1%. So we need to improve our engagement of the youth and making sure that they have all the right information about what's happening, not just all of the things that are happening in our region as it relates to workforce skills, abilities, certifications, and post-secondary training, all of the pieces that are needed for employers to be able to attach themselves. So working with that youth population would be key as well as we move forward. And youth have our service providers have services for our youth to be able to participate in. We see that lower skilled level jobs do remain, mostly those are the jobs that remain unfilled in Bruce, Grey, Huron, and Perth counties as well. So on an annual basis, the Ministry of Labour Training and Skills Development shares with the Planning Board the information about the employment services and programs that happen within our region. And so we share that back out. And one of the requirements is that we analyze that information and we share it back out to our partners in our community via the resource of our local labor market plan. So we are just going to slip into that discussion now and be able to share with you that information. So employment services served about 4,000 people, over 4,000 people this year. And these are the programs that they were able to share. Apprenticeships, 864 people served in the 2018-19 operating year. The job grant information, 447. Second career, 55. Youth job connections, 220. And literacy and basic skills, 726. And we'll get a little bit more into those numbers. And so we see a little bit of an increase of 170 compared to last year for the clients served by our employment service providers. And these would be our employment service providers across our 4-county region. For the apprenticeship program, as we go deeper into those numbers, we see that new registrations were 864. Good news, we see that number is rising. We went from 785 in 2017. We saw a little bit of a drop in 2018, and we see that number rising again. So good work to the people, to all of our partners out there that's really pushing the apprenticeship programs. We see that your work is being reflected in what's happening here in those numbers. Continue doing that. We have active apprentices for the 4-county region of over 2,000 people. We have certificates of apprenticeships issued, 345. And then there's the modular training registrations at 311. So we see good activity happening across these supports for skilled trades and the apprenticeship programs within our region. The apprenticeship program, and these are where people are registering the top 10 trades in apprenticeship, and we see our very top being 110 at general carpenter, electrician, automotive service tech. So when you're thinking about the types of apprenticeships and the types of skilled trades work that's happening in our region, this document points to a good a resource to see where there's that movement in what needs to be done within our region. So, I'm giving you the highlights of this report, the local labor market plan. Make sure you connect with the document online. If you require a hard copy, we will be sending those out as well. So make sure you're keeping an eye on that, and we'll be able to share that with you. But there's a lot more information that is in this document. So please reach out and read that document and ask any additional questions you may have. We saw a decrease of employers using the Canada Ontario Job Grant. So please make sure that you're talking to your employers about how they might be able to utilize this particular service from our employment service providers to improve the skills of their employees as they start to re-engineer, regenerate themselves, see how they might be able to attach themselves to these programs moving forward. For those employers that are using the Canada Ontario Job Grants, we see that the smaller employers are the largest numbers that are using, with less than 50 employees, which is a good way for small employers who may not have the ability to have a training budget or a large training budget. This is one way that they can certainly grow those skills internally. And we see that the increased trainee productivity. Now, this is a really interesting stat that employers are able to see that when they participate in Canada Ontario Job Grant, 91.4% of their they saw productivity increased, and the training met their workforce needs. Excellent stats. And congratulations to our employment service providers as they continue to do that. Second career are for people who are laid off and looking to change how they might interact in the labor market. And this again is through our service providers. And we see that number going down drastically. So, regenerating and thinking about how you might be able to reskill, retool, get involved in a new labor market, in a different labor market, will certainly be a way that second career can help our local residents to be able to build those skills and meet the needs of employers. Literacy and basic skills continues to help people to develop their communication, numeracy, interpersonal and digital skills, and to achieve goals such as, being from unemployed to transitioning to employment, to post-secondary, or even including apprenticeships. So we want to see that local employees, local workforce, local residents are participating and engaging in literacy and basic skills. And we see that the number did go down between 2016 and 2018, but we see that number rising again in 2018-19. So let's just keep getting that information out there and sharing with people how employers are engaging with people who have additional job skills. We talked about the number of Youth Job Connection, and this program serves 15 to 29-year-olds that are engaged in the labor market, and we see that 220 participated in the last operating year. Now, this is the information I was talking about that was coming up, and here's the migration report. This is a small information about migration. There's a lot more in the report, so please read that report to get some more details around educational attainment levels and skill levels and so on of people moving in, and age cohorts moving in and out of our region. So the 15 were plus labor force, we see that Bruce County had a net gain of 810 people. And as we look at then the business counts for Bruce County, we see that 16%, so 71%, the largest percentage of your businesses, Bruce County, is self-employed people. So, connecting with self-employed people, and if they are willing and interested in growing that business to become, a payrolled business company, then certainly there's some work that can be done there, a significant percentage of businesses there. And then we see our next highest being businesses that are 1 to 4 employees with 16%. So when we talk about how do we support businesses to grow and continue to operate successfully in Bruce County, we see that is a good place to start and being that support. And I'm sure Bruce County, this is not news to Bruce County, but certainly something to pay attention to. We move on to Grey County numbers now, and we see that the labor force 15 plus people moving into Grey County and moving out of. Grey County had a net gain of 1,255 people in that labor force category. This is not population data, this is labor force data. And again, we see 69% of businesses in Grey County are self-employed people. And then the next highest 17% being businesses with 1 to 4 employees. That's small labor force again, and employers with needing resources to be able to continue to support and grow that workforce for sure. And as we move on to Huron County, again, the labor force 15 plus, Huron County saw a net gain of 50 people in that labor force moving as they moved in and out of Huron County, 50 people. And the business numbers, similar types of information, 74% at self-employed, and 14% of those businesses are 1 to 4 employees. So we're seeing this trend across our 4-county region, nothing too new to our economic development partners, but certainly keeping in mind when you are supporting businesses and when you are looking for employment and employer engagement, when you're thinking about that smaller employer, how do you connect with them? It's a different, I would imagine it's a different way of connecting when you have larger employers to smaller employers. And moving on to Perth County, labor force 15 plus, Perth County saw a net gain of 195 people in that labor force category. And the number of businesses, again, reflective of those large numbers of self-employed people, really supporting self-employment in our rural communities across Bruce, Grey Huron, and Perth counties. Perth County at 70%, and 15% of their businesses are within that 1 to 4 category. And really kind of, again, giving us that example of where we need to put that support and how we might develop a strategy that really is different for those categories of employee size ranges of businesses as we're working with them. So what I'm going to ask is, I can't see the questions at the moment because I'm presenting, so I will take your questions. There is a question period at the end of my presentation, so please just send those questions in and I'll make sure to get to each of them as quickly as I can. And so everyone knows that we do the EmployerOne survey. Just as a highlight, we did this is the last year that we're doing the EmployerOne survey. We did have less numbers participating this year, so we felt after 6 years of delivering this survey, maybe this was a good time to take a break and come back to that and revisit that in the future as a possibility. So we would certainly be looking at what we might be able to do in the future. However, for 2020-21, there will be no EmployerOne survey that will be deployed in our region. So to bring you up to date, we had 421 total surveys across our 4-county region, and only 341 employers completed the survey, but that still remains a statistically valid sample size for our region. for the entire region, the 4-county region, when we look at that. And so we wanted to make sure that you knew that this is still information that you can rely on, as it does reflect a statistically valid sample size for our region. So not to worry about the quality of the data, and certainly the information that you're going to receive through that. I will just give you a snapshot of EmployerOne and the availability of the qualified workforce. This is what our employers are saying. So 75% said fair to poor or poor, and 25% either excellent or good. So we see that we are, and this is, and bear in mind, the question that we ask is the availability of qualified workers. So what the employers are saying here, they're talking about the skills, the abilities, and the qualifications that they're looking for to fill those jobs that they have advertised. So that is the qualifying remark that I would make around this particular question that we ask employers. So hiring in 2019, we see that a decrease slightly in our full-time hiring across the 4-county region at 43%, and we see some part-time, a slight decrease for a 4-county region, and we see that 36% an increase in seasonal hiring for our region. And then as we flip into our separations, which kind of talks about, those retention stats and how are we able to continue to keep our people who in the workforce and engaged in workforce activity, we see that in 2019, quits were at 51%, which is no change for a 4-county region. We still need to adjust and find out, what's happening. We do have some employers talking to us about training for supervisory, making sure that they are able to connect and communicate and really engage with the labor force, their workers, and making sure that we are able to keep them. Retention is going to be key as we move forward. We see that the second highest is permanent layoffs at 21%, and that we did see an increase in 2019, and dismissals, a slight decrease of 13% for that year. Hard to fill positions. We see that, again, we continue to see not enough applicants, 59%. We did see a decrease. And then, of course, the other three are the motivation, the qualification. And this is interesting because the technical skills are showing up more and more now, and the lack of work experience. So just a quick mention of that lack of work experience. We do need employers to give people a chance so they can become engaged in the workforce, and use the services that are available to you in your community through employment services to help you with that work experience piece. Maybe there's something that your service provider can help you with, because if we don't have employers giving new entrants to the workforce that ability to gain that experience, then we will continue to see that as being a problem in our workforce. And I think some of the work that we've done in the past, it really does frustrate our workforce as they're trying to enter and build those skills, getting that opportunity. So just as something to think about. The way that our employers recruit is it continues to be word of mouth, and then they go into that online job board. So we're seeing that word of mouth is increasing across our region. We see online job boards increasing as well, and social media is increasing. The company's own website is increasing, but you can see 37% using there, and newspaper ads. So I think this shows that employers are trying every method they can to reach that workforce. Just as an aside, I would like to mention that word of mouth really limits your ability, though, to reach a larger audience. So hopefully our employers are, while we do use word of mouth, you're also engaging and using other ways of recruiting as well to broaden your network to be able to get to the right person that will fill your positions. The anticipated hires for 2018 we're seeing a lot of our, we're seeing skilled trades here. We're seeing entry-level positions, general positions. We're seeing some qualifications like our drivers, including AZ, and we're seeing that there are some new ones that are looking at, retail cashiers and administrative assistants kind of being the larger ones there. Larger businesses will most likely to report that they plan to hire in 2020. So that's kind of what we were seeing as we analyzed the different sizes of our responding employers, and reminding that this information is from our responding employers. We feel like it was significance, you know the word, statistical significance. There, I got it out. We see that this represents a lot of what's happening in our region. Retention strategies. So this is a new question that we asked this year. We asked the employers about their concerns with workplace retention for the first time. This is the first time we're asking this question. 62% of the employers indicated that retention is a concern for their organization, and larger businesses had more concerns around retention than smaller businesses. So the employers were then asked what they are presently doing to encourage retention. And so we wanted to see if you are concerned about it, but also what are you doing in your own business to be able to entice and engage people. So we see that 62% of our businesses give regular increases in salaries and benefits. And then, of course, there's the recognition and employee perks. And so some of those employee perks are listed in this presentation, and it is also listed in the document that we have as well. Training opportunities made that top list, and job flexibility. And, just reflecting a little bit on what we are experiencing right now, what we are seeing is some of those flexibilities. We're being forced to work within that job flexibility piece. And we are going to learn new ways of working and providing our services. So this will be interesting when we get back to talking about these retention strategies. Succession planning is another question we wanted to ask employers about. How were they dealing with retirements and growth for the next year? 38% said that they had a succession plan to deal with any growth or retirements. And in the percentages, as you can see on there, but according to our top 5 employment sectors, agriculture 38% and so on, our highest being healthcare and social assistance at 57%, and second highest manufacturing. So employers who have a succession plan in place, and we're seeing that employers are planning, and this is our top 5 employment sectors as we have identified in our employment numbers. So comments from employers, overall difficulties attracting employees to the rural region, and housing, so the Growing Your Workforce, that's a conference that we held in October of last year. And, reflecting back on how do we attract employees to rural regions? How do we grow our local skill base? And we've talked about that from previous slides. And also, how do we retain employees as part of that Growing Your Workforce piece? Housing shortages, we see that reflective. And of course, it's the accessible housing we talked about that lower entry-level skill positions. And so we are looking at housing that will match those types of incomes. And we really need to work on that. I know most of our region is working on that. And then, of course, transportation being another piece that's a challenge. And as we talk about those transportation pieces, I just wanted to mention that I recently heard about Wellington County doing this Ride Well program. And if you are interested in finding out more, please contact Wellington County. I just heard about it about a week ago and thought it was a really interesting concept for us to at least think about how we might be able to do transportation differently, innovatively in rural communities where it is a challenge. And I know that there are other things happening across our region, and we need to just explore some more how we could do that well. Like I said, it's going to be a marathon. I'll go very quickly through this one. We do have another presentation, so we will go there quickly and talk about the purpose is to learn more about what motivates people to stay in their job or leave a job, what is valued in the workplace, and the relative importance. And these are the top 10 identified strategies that you will see posted on our website as well. But we wanted to just highlight that report piece and share with you what we have come up with. So the tips on focus on bringing in the best people, maintaining strong communication through the organization, compensating employees as much as possible. And we saw those tips previously. Focus on company culture, and not just having a company culture, but living that company culture is definitely important. Create and maintain transparent workplace policies. Tip 6, give employees ownership over their jobs. So really having them consider what needs to be done, what are the outcomes the employer or your needs to see, and then giving them that ownership to be able to develop the best way to gain success. Promote learning and career growth opportunities, encourage the development of soft skills, and provide opportunities for that to happen in your workplace, I would say, is going that extra step. Tip number 9 is allow flexibility where possible. And we're talking about that work-life balance. If people can be allowed, and this doesn't happen in every workplace, so we recognize that it can't happen in every workplace. So, can people start earlier, work, later, have some time in the middle for that work-life balance? So really looking at that. And then Tip number 10, establish a workplace that prioritizes key values, and you have your key values and you work at how you're going to establish making that happen. So that's me. I'm sorry, I want to keep us on time. So really wanting to make sure that I'm able to go over the information and give you a time to have questions. And then we have some great information coming up from Paul. So certainly be able to hear more about that. So let's hear about, do we have any questions from any of the information that I was able to present to you? Okay. So there's a question from so was there anything discussed about how employers talked about getting more involved in taking on apprentices as it seems that many need to leave to find these opportunities? We had some discussions around employers getting more involved, and I think that would be definitely an ongoing discussion with employers as to how they're going to continue to participate. I know I've seen an increase in employers participating, but there's always more work that we can do. So certainly encouraging employers and other areas about how we might be able to do that would be great. So certainly those conversations need to be continuing and happening. There's an ask to mention the Women of Steel, which is supported by the Canadian Welding Bureau, and it is through Fanshawe College in Tiverton. So lots of great things happening in our communities, and definitely thank you very much for that heads up, Heather, to make sure that we don't miss some really key information there. The other question is there any talk of strategies to keep youth? Did anything come from a previous pilot project in the region? And all of our communities are talking about how we might be able to, not necessarily, I wouldn't say necessarily keep youth here. If youth would like to stay here, then we would have opportunities for them. We've identified some of the opportunities, and there are other training and direct to job kind of opportunities. But I think also the thing that we need to grow is to say, if our youth would like to go off and gain some training, some special skills somewhere, what are the opportunities that exist within our region to make sure that they know they can have a great future in 4 County, Bruce Grey here and in Perth? So one of the things that we have done to try to get us to that next step is that career profile for the highly skilled professional. And being that if our youth go off to training, then how can they come back and be engaged in that labor market? So we certainly want to keep those conversations going. And if as our community partners think about what are the ways that you can engage people, we certainly want to talk about what are the opportunities that exist and how can people get involved. So certainly keeping that in mind. And I would submit to say that maybe not just our youth, which our youth are 15 to 29 in the official description of who youth are, but certainly people that are 30, 35, how can you come back and be engaged and bring those wonderful skills that you're developing with you to our region? So certainly we want to be able to continue that conversation. So there is a question here, a comment, I think it's more so, that the lower numbers of COJG could be partially attributed to the reduction in funding that the program saw last year. So thank you for that clarifying comment there, Linda, from one of our service providers. That is good to know. And so when we get this data, it really does give us the ability to see what's happening in our region. And then there is a comment, the literacy and basic skill numbers are lower than the actual adults served because, right. So the numbers, sometimes the numbers, and this happens across, this also happens across the region. And in StatsCan, there is a standard by which numbers are reported. And so to protect confidentiality and anonymity, if there are numbers that are less than 10, whether it's 10 businesses in a community or 10 people in a community, if numbers are less than 10 in a program or a place, then those numbers are suppressed. So we want to make sure that we are continuing to protect people's confidentiality as we're sharing information. And so that does happen, that data suppression does happen, and we wanted to make sure that people understand that these numbers are not absolute, but they are the best numbers that we have to go on, that's for sure. And we wanted to thank Linda for making the point about the funding, because if funding is lower, then of course we're going to see less people, the ability for people to be able to participate in the training and so on. So thank you for those great questions. I hope I didn't miss anyone. I don't think I did. And continue to put those questions up there. If you think of a question that you have even before we end, just put it in there and we'll make sure that we get to those responses. It is my great pleasure to introduce to you now Paul Nafalk, who is he works with, his business is Community Benchmarks, and Paul has done some great work for us over the years, but certainly this year we're introducing to you some new information, and we wanted to talk more about that commuter workforce and so on. So I won't give away anything. I'm just going to introduce Paul Nafalk, and Paul will give you all the details around that research for a 4-county region. Paul.
I hope everybody can hear me. Today I want to talk to you about workforce attraction and retention, and specifically I want to look at movers and commuters in and out of your 4 counties. We started this project last year, mid-2019, so we were really being guided by the 2018 data. And what I'm trying to say is that the world has changed, as you all know. We started looking at the ability to attract and retain workers because the unemployment rate, as Gemma said, was so low. Gemma mentioned it was 3.7% in 2018, and it only went up to 4.3% last year. Basically, the unemployment rate was very low. There were an incredible number of job vacancies, and these job vacancies existed across Ontario. Up until a month ago, there were 210,000 vacancies within Ontario. So it was a very competitive labor environment. And it was important that we were able to attract and retain. And the 4-county workforce planning board, of course, is an evidence-based board. And so we decided to pull some numbers about attraction. All right, so that's more of the origin of the research. One other thing I'd like to add about the origin of the research, we're also aware, and Gemma alluded to this in her presentation, that we're also aware that if we look at the population 15 and over, that almost 25% of that group is 65 and older. So Jim talked about an aging population. We know this demographic is only getting older. So we know that the local labor force is just not enough. We have to look at attraction and retention. However, in the last few weeks, things have changed. We're clearly running into a period where we're going to have a significant number of people unemployed. So does that gut the research? No, it doesn't. Attraction and retention is still important to communities. It's just not as urgent as it was 2 weeks ago. And the reason for that is that we have people who are losing their jobs. We don't know the extent of this job loss or how long it'll last, so that's unclear. But we still need to be able to draw people into the area and prevent people from leaving. For example, we have people who are going to lose jobs in hospitality, for example, and they may not easily transition into the agriculture sector, which is so desperate for workers right now with our offshore workers not coming in. Now, with skills training, of course, they may be able to, but that takes time. Let me give you a more emphatic example. We need healthcare workers. We needed them before the COVID-19 crisis. Simply having more unemployed people doesn't necessarily help us fill the healthcare worker void. Obviously, these things take time. 2 years at a minimum for some workers and 4 or more years for others. So we still need to be able to attract and retain. It's just not as urgent as it was. So it is still relevant today. And lastly, I'd like to say that of all the things that businesses / employers are facing right now, it is critical that the lack of labor or the right skills is not a challenge that they have to deal with. They have so many other challenges. The labor supply is something that we can help with. So, anyhow, very important. Okay, so today I want to focus on each county. There are 4 counties, of course, in the workforce, the 4-county workforce planning board, which makes it more complicated. But nonetheless, I want to show you some numbers for each of the counties. So I want to look at the ability to attract workers or the propensity to lose workers, and I want to do that from 2 perspectives: from a mover perspective and a commuter perspective. Now, I have to tell you, we're going to use census data to do this. And so we're going to look at 2011 to 2016. Now, you're probably rolling your eyes. I mean, a month ago, it seemed old. Today, it seems ancient. But it's still useful data. Because what it does, first of all, it allows us to look at labor mobility, and no other source allows us to do that. So it's useful. It's also useful because it helps us understand the track record that each of your 4 county has in its ability to attract or lose labor. And the track record's important. You can't be terrible at attracting or retaining labor and then become great at it. So the track record tells us about the nuances of the community. It's not just as simple as saying there's a job, there's not a job. There's a job, there's not a job, but is there housing? Is there transportation? Is there social services? Is there daycare? So the nuances of the community make it, basically, we see through the past, the track record of attracting and retaining workers, the ability of the community. Okay, so there's a lot to learn from the past as we move forward. Okay, so we're looking at the number of movers. Now, Gemma's touched on a little bit of this information. In the past, we were able to look at the population that moved. Of course, anytime we did that, and even up in your area, everybody would say, okay, everybody who moves here is retired. Well, now that we're able to look at the labor force benefits of the census, we've learned that, that not everybody is retired who moves to your area. So I have lots of numbers for you. I will tell you the stories around the numbers if you're not comfortable. You will also have access to this presentation if you want these numbers. Okay. So if you look, the labor force in Bruce, for example, the people who moved to Bruce, 62% of the people who moved to Bruce are in the labor force. So they're not all retired. Gray 65, Huron 64, and Perth is as high as 74%. So not all people are retired who move to your communities. And just so you have some context, Haliburton is as low as 53% of the people who move to Haliburton are in the labor force. Toronto was on the other end at 80%, just so you have context. So Bruce, Gray, Huron are on the lower side, below kind of the mid-mark within the province. Perth's above the mid-mark, okay? Moving forward, we're just going to look at those people who are in the labor force. Now, Gemma has already showed you these numbers, but I want to say a few more things about the numbers in front of you. You can find your county that's relevant to you. So in this table, we have those members who have moved to either Bruce, Gray, Huron, Perth, and moved away. Now, Gemma has showed us these numbers in the net gain. What I want to add, though, is that look at the scale of the movement. Thousands of people moved to, and away from your areas. The net gain kind of hides all of the number of people moving. And this is what I mean. The labor market is very fluid. It's very dynamic, and we need people moving in and out, and we need to be good at attracting and retaining people, because many communities are trying to attract and retain people. So the scale of movers is huge. We don't normally see that, and the census is the only source that lets us understand the scale of movement. Okay, so next slide. I don't want to totally overwhelm you. So instead of showing you the people who have moved in and then the people who have moved out, I'm just focusing on the net loss or gain. In Bruce had a net gain in all areas except 15 to 24-year-olds. Again, these are only members of the labor force. Gray and Huron, the same story for Gray and Huron, and Perth is a little bit of an exception. It had a small net loss of 50 people, 55 plus in the labor force. But for the most part, Bruce, Gray, Huron, and Perth are attracting more people than they're losing. I know from looking at the people who moved in and from the people who moved out that the 15 to 24 age cohort is the main cohort of movers, okay? It's also where Bruce, Gray, and Perth benefit the most from a net perspective, okay? All right, movers by educational attainment. So we have again, the people who have moved to Bruce, Gray, Huron, Perth, and by various level of educational attainment. Now, this is important because not all jobs require university. In Ontario alone, a month ago, when there are 210,000 vacant jobs in Ontario, 60% of them required high school or less. Okay, so it's important to know that you're able to pull people from different kind of educational attainment. So this table is showing you, the people who have moved to Bruce, or etc. The college seems to be where most of the greatest number of movers are they call it those people who have college education. Okay. It's very strange not being able to see the audience, so I'm struggling a bit with that. Movers by educational attainment. So I just showed you how many people moved to your areas. Now I've cut to what is the net gain and loss. So I'm not showing you who moved away, but you need to remember that thousands move in and out for the net result. Okay, so when we look at the net gains, we see that the university certificate diploma holders, it seems to be the greatest net gain in Bruce, Gray, and Perth. And the greatest net gain in Huron are people who have no certificate, diploma, or degree. So you see how the attraction and retention or the inability to retain can affect the supply and skill level of the labor force, okay? So from a net gain perspective, again, I'm trying to cut to the chase. So Bruce had a net gain of 15 or more people from 18 different regions or census divisions within Ontario. There are 49 census divisions in Ontario, just so you know. So Bruce attracted a net gain of 15 or more people from 18 different regions, and had a net loss of 15 or more people from 6 different regions. So from this, Bruce's track record and its ability to attract movers, members of the labor force, is very positive. I've seen many communities that have poor track records in their ability to outcompete other communities. And again, back in this time, as there's such a labor shortage, it was very important. So Bruce seems to be quite competitive in its ability to attract people over this time period. So that's its track record. Gray also seems to be quite competitive in its ability to attract people. Gray had a net gain of 15 or more people from 19 different regions, census divisions within Ontario, and a net loss of 15 or more from only 7 different regions. So Gray seems to be quite attractive in its ability, at least over this time period, 2011, 2016, to attract workers, to win workers. Okay, we know we lose them, but we want to attract more than we lose. Oh, okay. Huron movers. Huron seems to be a little bit more balanced in that it had a net gain of 15 or more people from 13 different regions and a net loss to 15 different regions. So Huron's struggling a little bit more over this time period. I would like to say I've seen many counties with doing far worse than this. And there's always reasons. There's different geographies, different economic structures, all kinds of factors that affect these numbers, okay? And again, but we learn from our track record. Perth, net gain or loss. Perth kind of balanced out. Perth had a net gain of 15 or more people from 16 regions, and it had a net loss of 15 or more people to 15 different regions. So not winning, not losing, holding its own type thing. Okay, so now we've looked at the movers or your track record, the county's track record. I want to kind of segue now into commuting patterns, because that's another way we attract workers or we lose workers is simply by commuting patterns. So my segue into this is to look at the residents of Bruce, Grey, Huron, and Perth. And so 75% of Bruce residents work in Bruce. That means, though, that 25% of Bruce residents are working outside of Bruce. So they're commuting. And the same story, although a little for Grey, it's instead of 25 commuting out, it's more around 28% of Bruce residents are waking up in Grey and commuting out for work. Huron's in the same ballpark. Perth has the highest percent of its residents working in Perth. Okay. Clearly, there's commuting going on. All right, and now where do employees live? In Bruce, 79% of jobs were filled by residents. So clearly another 21% of people are coming into Bruce to work. A similar number for Grey. Grey's attracting a similar number of people who must come into the community to work. A similar number for Huron. It's Perth that seems to be different compared to the other three counties, where 72% of Perth jobs were filled by residents, but a far higher proportion are coming in from other areas. Okay, so this is kind of my segue into there's commuting patterns and we need to understand them. All right, so now some level of commuting is expected, of course. I mean, sometimes people live very close to a county border and you just cross the border, and that's totally reasonable. So some level of commuting is expected. Where it gets worrisome, though, is when people are commuting too far and where you become vulnerable to losing them. So from a commuting perspective, we have for Bruce, Bruce is always first because it's alphabetical, live in the county, work outside. That's 6,000 people live in Bruce, work outside. 4,810 people work in Bruce, but live outside the county. So interestingly, Bruce, Grey, and Huron have a net loss of residents. Okay, they wake up in Bruce, Grey, and Huron, and more people commute out to work than commute in to work. So as you can see, there's, I'm not used to being, I like to be able to point to the screen, but you can see there's a net loss of commuters for Bruce, Grey, and Huron. Perth, on the other hand, has more people who commute into Perth to work than residents who commute out to work. So Perth is a little bit different in this sense, okay? And again, all these factors, depending on where you are geographically in your economy, etc., affect the commuting flows. All right, so from an education perspective, I've just cut to the chase here to look at the net gain or loss. Keep in mind, there are lots of people that make up these numbers. So the net gain is you're seeing actually, well, the Bruce, Grey, and Huron, where there is a significant net loss, almost in all educational attainment categories. There is an exception for apprenticeship, trades, and certificates in Bruce. Perth is the exception, where all educational attainments, there's a net gain of people. Okay, these numbers might be a little heavy. They're there for you to look at if you want to, but it's not concentrated in one particular educational attainment, and that's kind of what I was looking for. It's spread about. So it appears that your communities are great places to live, and in many instances, people commute out to work. Okay, so you're losing that labor force. Okay, not to overdo it, but so of the 6,005 Bruce residents who work outside Bruce, the main occupation, the occupation with the greatest number of people commuting out is the industrial, electric, and trade occupation. Okay, so wake up in Bruce, commute out. There are 900 Bruce residents have a one-way median commuting distance of over 100 kilometers. I flagged that because that's a long way to be driving. You could be vulnerable to losing those workers. That could potentially obviously wear a person down over time. Okay, we have a lot more with regards to occupations and distances, but again, I don't want to overwhelm you here. So where Bruce employees are living outside, we know there's 4,810 Bruce employees living outside Bruce. The main occupation coming in with the greatest numbers is service support and other service occupations. Okay, we also have some income data as well, but again, not to overwhelm you. And there are 865 people who commute over 100 kilometers one way to Bruce for work. I would say Bruce employers are vulnerable to losing those people because that's a long distance to be traveling. Okay, it's not a huge number, but it's a long distance. Okay. All right, Gray residents working outside Gray. Same thing. We've noticed it's the same occupation keeps coming up. So the industrial, electrical, and trade occupation has the highest number of people waking up in Gray and commuting out. And then there are actually almost 2,000 Gray residents have a one-way commuting distance exceeding 90 kilometers. That's a lot of people driving a long way for work. Now, maybe they do that because Gray is a wonderful place to live, but that's a long distance to be commuting. So we just want to make you aware of that, okay? Gray employees living outside Gray, again, same occupation, sales, service, and support, and other service occupations had the greatest number of workers commuting into Gray. Maybe that has to do with the nature of the economy. Now, why they don't live there, I don't know that, but it's something to discuss. And 600 people commute over 86 kilometers one way to Gray for work. Again, that's quite a distance, okay? So not big numbers, but perhaps a more vulnerable component of the labor force. 2 more counties to go. Huron residents working outside Huron. So there were 5,820 Huron residents who work outside Huron. It's the same occupation we're seeing. This occupation likes to travel or commute. I will point out that because this is commuter patterns, these are people who have a usual place of work. So they're going to the same place every day. And yet it's funny, we're still flagging the same occupation that seems to be commuting, industrial, electrical, and trade occupation. In Huron's case, the number is quite small with the number of residents commuting more than 100 kilometers one way. It's 315 residents, so it's on the smaller side. So I see that as a positive thing. Huron employees living outside Huron, same occupation. These people are known for their commuting, industrial, electrical, and trade occupation, and 390 people commute over 50 kilometers one way to Huron. Huron has kind of the smallest commuting shed. From an environmental perspective, that's great. From a losing employees perspective, that's great. You're not as vulnerable. And so whether it's the geographic area of Huron, I'm not sure, but I have noticed that. Okay. And our final county of Perth residents working outside Perth, the same occupation is the highest number commuting out. Perhaps somebody can explain to me why that is the case. It's the same occupation for all 4 areas. And Perth has 415 Perth residents commuting one way. 415 Perth residents have a one-way commuting distance exceeding 100 kilometers. Again, that's quite a drive, making those workers more vulnerable. And the reason we're looking at are they vulnerable, leaving or holding on to them is because we're looking at workforce attraction and retention. And my final slide, with regards to Perth employees living outside Perth, it's the same occupation that has the greatest number commuting out, and only 200 people commute over 100 kilometers one way to Perth for work. So Perth is relying on these 200 people commuting more than 100 kilometers, but it is just 200 people. So that's a positive thing. So it was kind of a real high level, and I know quite a few numbers. These numbers, again, the presentation is available to you. There's more in the report, but I think it's important to point out that Attraction and retention remains important, even with the unemployment rates going up and potentially even way up. While skills training is excellent, it often takes time, and communities are used to pulling people, or most communities are used to being able to pull people and lose people in a very mobile labor market. And it's really important to employers that this continues to happen. But our communities also have to be attractive places. They have to be complete in order to attract workers, like healthcare workers. And I'm saying this prior to the pandemic. So thank you. I'm going to switch now so I can see questions. I can't see them at the moment. So
thank you, Paul. So I love data, so I always love hearing what you have to say, and I'm hoping that our 4 counties, Bruce Grey, Huron, and Perth, find that information useful in planning. Of course, commuter information as it relates to the workforce is always going to be, in our perspective anyway, as a workforce development board, very, very important. So I do have a question for you. Do you have details of skill levels of people moving into each county? So you do have that, but do you have the skill levels of types of jobs in each county by percentage to compare whether the newcomers fit jobs available?
We know the occupations of people moving in and out of each county. And we know, I also do know as a percentage, for example, the people commuting out as a percentage of all residents. So yes, we can obtain that data. I'm hoping I understood the question properly though, Gemma.
So in other words, do we have the information that will actually support people coming into our region? And I would say yes, we do have that information of the types of jobs, and that would come from job boards and job banks and any of those social media posts where people might be able to get that information. So for instance, the planning board has tools that we can kind of get that information about types of jobs that employers are looking for, the skill levels that they're looking for, and we're hoping to do much more around that. So in a sense, we have some of that information happening. We just need to be able to if somebody's going to move, I think they'll have they'll know what's needed and what's happening, and be able to share that information out. Thank you, Paul, for that response. I think. So there are some comments. So because we don't have a way for our audience to be able to participate, in with voice, I'm going to also read those comments so everybody gets to share what we're hearing here. So if you have any comments as well, please go ahead and pop those in the chat. So there is a question in our current COVID situation. Do you see an opportunity to hold roundtable video conferences with local employers discussing partnerships to overcome their similar workforce challenges and issues? And that comes in from Jamie. And I would say, Jamie, as the 4 County Labor Market Planning Board continues to be responsible for pulling people together and talking about workforce issues, it certainly behooves us to look at ways that we can continue to gather that information, even at this time when it's very difficult, and it's absolutely imperative that we keep away, like social distancing. We keep those tenants in place. I think that we can certainly do that. We are certainly talking about how do we continue business once, while we're still in this situation. And certainly if employers are available to be able to communicate with us, or like these video conferences, we certainly will be looking at ways that we're going to continue to capture that information. Thank you for that question, because it is important about how can we, how will we, how might we continue to do some semblance of business as we continue to deal with this pandemic situation. It's a very key and valid conversation and question at the moment. And just know that as our community, we will continue to look at ways that we can continue to engage employers, engage the workforce, and provide you with the most up-to-date and reliable information that we can. That would be our promise to you as part of our key performance indicators that our board and our strategic plan indicates to us. So thank you for that, Jamie. Jim has a question as well, a comment and a question. So similar to the manner in which universities and colleges visit secondary schools to promote and recruit students to attend their institutions, are there plans for trade representatives to do similar? And I would say that Four County Labor Market Planning Board does not have any immediate plans to address that, but I do know that there are community partners that are engaged in this type of activity. And just recently, there was a skilled trades career fair for information and so on in Kincardine. I believe that was led by a group of the municipality of Kincardine and VPI Employment Solutions. So the similar kinds of activities happen with the Y Employment Services, I know, with those hands-on activities. So we know that some of this is already happening, where the service providers are connecting with the employers that are involved, the employers, the unions that are involved with the skilled trades, to be able to work with them to get the information out. So I would say, Jim, that it is happening, and I think you'll see more of that happening in Stratford, for instance. In Perth County, there is the Real Deal on Skilled Trades, where employers are engaged in this career and information sharing activity that happens in the south of our region, Four County region, and of course the Build a Dream event that happened through the Bruce Grey Catholic District School Board and the Blue Water District School Boards. That event also speaks to the fact of apprenticeships and skilled trades. So certainly activities are happening. Can more be done? Absolutely. As we talk about how do we change misconceptions and involve and include and encourage people to be involved in the skilled trades, we'll see more of that happening. So we've answered Sharon's question, and Mark has a comment here. Mark's comment is the NOC 72 careers, and I don't have that information in front of me, so please, you'll have to look that up online. The Government of Canada provides information on the North American Occupational Classification, so please check that out. Careers are all high demand trades that pay well. He just wanted to get that out there. And actually, Mark did go on to say electrical, plumbing, machining, masonry, pipe fitters, welders, etc. are NOC 72, NOC 72, and that they're in all high demand and they pay well. So certainly keeping your eye out for information around how long does it take to become a journeyman? What are the steps to take to do that? And lots of information in the Ontario website as well as the federal website. Thank you, Mark. Mark is one of our partners from the Avon-Maitland District School Board down in Huron and Perth, and Mark just wanted to shout out to this great way today with live stream for small and rural employers and employees to engage. So thank you for recognizing that, Mark. We were hoping that we could do something to still engage people in our discussions and in our community for sure. So, you know, as we have 10 more minutes before we wrap up at 3 o'clock. I just glanced over at my clock there, just to let you know, first of all, thank you very much for attending today, and that we are able to keep this event going. We did promise you lunch. I'm sorry. I hope you really had a great lunch between 12 and 1. We had, you know, we are respecting that social distancing, not coming together in groups, but we are hoping that this is a good way for us to continue to connect and be able to have the relevant and necessary conversations moving forward. I wanted to say, please stay in touch. You have our contact information, planningboard.ca. You will be able to find our emails. Well, actually, no, you won't be able to find our emails, but you certainly will be able to find our phone number. And we did remove our emails because of all the spam information that we get. Before I wrap up, I want to remind you that you will see the recorded versions of this event available once we have them live. We will send out an email to all of the people that registered with us through Eventbrite. We have your contact information, so we will send that out to you when it's ready. We want to remind you, please, to fill out the survey that we need to respond to the ministry about what our documents were able to provide to you, and was it well laid out and written. Those documents can be found at the top of this live stream button. You will see the EmployerOne 2020, the Employee Retention Report, the In-Demand Skilled Trades Report, the Employer Toolkit around the retention strategies, the 10 tips that I went over, and of course our local labor market plan. All of those documents are available now to you. And if you have some time to read it, we would love to hear from you before the 28th of March, if that's possible, so we can send that up to the ministry. So thank you so much. Hard copies will be available. We actually have them right now. I have the EmployerOne survey available right now in my hand, and the local labor market plan also we've received from the printer, and waiting, and all of the other documents we can send you hard copy as well. So just let us know. And like I said, we are going to be waiting to send those out. So please to do that. It is certainly a new way of doing business, and we're going to try our best to accommodate what we need to do to be successful and to help our community be successful. As I wrap up, I just want to say thank you to, so we'll start with Darlene, our presenters. Darlene, Ting Ting, Paul, for being such great sports. Paul is down in the St. Catharines area. Ting Ting's in London. Darlene's closer to Wyerton, and we made it work. And I'm here stationed in Woketon. Thank you so much to our researchers, Ting Ting and Sarah. Thank you, and Paul. Thank you for all the hard work that you've done to give us something that we can certainly share back with our community and have it be of value to them. CTRE Productions. Wow. Thank you. We were wondering what we should do about this, and they were really good with us to say we can do this still live, and they worked so hard with us. So thank you for your professionalism and your wonderful support, both to Russ and Dylan, for making this happen. Thank you so much. Eric Lockhart, who worked with us for the In-Demand Skilled Trades project out of Queen's University to gather information. Thank you for your support as well. And finally, Melissa. Melissa in our office is amazing at event planning and pulling things together. And she was able to make this happen in a very short space of time, and not just in a short space of time, with limited and time with her working from home and really changing the way we do business. She was able to make us pull this off. Thank you so much, Melissa. Thank you for all of you online, and I'm getting some comments saying thanks, and we thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us. We really do appreciate that. It's a stressful time, and for you to take the time out of your busy schedule to be our audience today, just know how much we really appreciate you doing that. And we will continue to serve you as best we can in this current time, and we will be here after. We will all be doing this together, and we thank you for that. And I don't have anything else to say except thank you, and we'll be speaking with you soon again.